Hello there folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss different topics like psychology, spirituality, introspection, dream interpretation and other similar topics that may include game design, game interpretation, game testing. If you have some games that you've created or you want me to test them, feel free to throw me a copy of it and I will create some YouTube videos with that, giving some constructive criticism. Now, speaking about video games, this will be a short video on why I simply don't like um, fast-paced video games. Now, this topic is not gonna discuss why I would hate such games, because I don't hate them. It's just that I don't feel called to them, okay? Throughout my existence, I've had numerous situations in which I didn't like something. I didn't know why, but I simply didn't feel drawn towards that. And I also felt a kind of a wall in between me and that. And when it came to video games, I realized sooner or later in life that I simply could not handle certain types of games, okay? Super fast video games like StarCraft and those types of strategy games where you have to think by the second. For some reason I didn't necessarily like those. I did try them, but for some reason I kind of rarely clicked with them, and they made me think as if I was kind of lacking something, as if there was something broken, as if there was some problem with me, okay? Like Dark Crusade, the games, the Warhammer series, StarCraft, Warcraft 3. I was much more drawn to games that required a lot more patience. For example, Sins of a Solar Empire. Okay, now ever since I was young, my way of raising and what I drew from my parents was somewhat a lot of control and a longing for stability. Everything I would create in video games had to be stable, so I would not base myself too much on military, rather than I would base myself a lot on defenses and careful economical expansion. But in fast-paced video games that's kind of rarely the case. Now I'm overcoming this, and very recently I realized the answer for this question as well. For example, in my life I kind of was not drawn to a lot of girls, and strangely speaking they were somewhat drawn to me. And well, even if I didn't have any relationship, because for some reason I wasn't drawn by having any relationship, I did get quite very close to each each of these girls, because of my sense of introspection and understanding things beyond a certain limit, okay? Probably this was one of the things that would draw people's attention, and each and every person that I met actually served in a way towards my awakening towards my own great potential. We all have that, but it's stagnant within us, and the low self-esteem that we are put on our lap, right on our back, by our parents, school, society and the such, is, well, nothing else than a way to promote self-ignorance, okay? And it's kind of ridiculous that school teaches ignorance, because the purpose of school should be education. And education means, well, stemming from the Latin educario, it means to raise out of ignorance, right? It means to pull away from ignorance. Now video games can actually boost this ignorance a lot, because most people call to video games as what I call myself drug activities, right? Many people call to video games as a distraction from their own life, because they don't simply like their life. And also, it's not the video games themselves that do that, but more like how people's minds are programmed to work. Video games can offer you a very quick dose of what's called a dopamine intoxication. I actually made a recent video about this, and the darker side of games that you may not necessarily perceive or understand. This dopamine hit, okay, these dopamine rushes are kind of the exact same reasons of why coffee is also not good. Okay, they give you this rush of adrenaline, right? They make you feel as if you're on top of the world, but technically what they're doing is they're slowly feasting upon your energy, and that is why later on you are feeling so out of energy, right? And you feel that you need more of that. It's a very addictive drug. What caffeine does to your brain, it gives it a boost of dopamine, which makes you very unstable. Okay, it makes you somewhat happy, but the point says, okay, you have this dopamine, you feel somewhat happy, and when you are happy, you make sloppy mistakes and you make bad decisions, right? And then you suddenly feel out of energy and you need more of that, right? It's like a pact with the devil. You're constantly feeding some entities beyond. Okay, that's where the impulse to get more of that comes from, and it also comes from the instinctive running of the brain. If the brain finds a source of dopamine, then it's gonna prompt you towards that more and more, and you're gonna focus more and more on that. That is why you can't take your mind off coffee and your video games that you may get too attached to, because all these hooks are psychologically meant against you, to hook you and use this dopamine rush against you. Now it's not the game's fault, it is psychologically built on such premises to keep you hooked, especially MMORPGs and mobile games, with repetitive sequences of daily quests and all other things that make your mind constantly focus on those, right? Now this is, well, yes, a way that they trick your mind and they exploit your poor brain, because we may have evolved as humans and reached a huge amount of technological developments, but the brain we have is still a primitive form. Okay, it's still the brain that other animals have. Yes, it is capable of experiencing through multiple awarenesses, right, and dimensions and the such, but the point is, in terms of its functions, it's still almost the same, if not the same, with that of the animals, right? It's very hard to control your impulses. It's very hard to control your your urges, your needs, right? Especially when they come in such a powerful burst, right? When your brain wants that coffee, it's very, very hard to give it up. Well, I don't know, because for some reason I was protected by the universe by this certain coffee. I kind of rarely drank any, and I couldn't trigger you know any dependency upon that, right? So in life, you see, in your life, there will be certain things that you will go through because everything serves your awakening. Okay, and in my case, most likely, I was kept away from a lot of girls and a lot of people, by all kind of thoughts, that I don't like those people. I almost became even intimate with those. Well, it's kind of fuzzy words, because the most intimate you can become physically is probably in intercourse, sexual intercourse, which I didn't ever get to with any person, because as I said, I kind of knew in a way that I wouldn't click with those people, right? Even if I was like hormone driven to go wacky with such people, there was always a part beyond me that would do probably a lot of things, probably not, but I was always shielded against all these, because like, it was as if I'd only need to experience a bit of this, a bit of that, instead of going through the whole aspect of pointless relationships. Okay, and as I became more introspective, as I became closer to the universe, and I kind of get the impression that nowadays the universe is actually speaking my language to me. And it's been telling me for a long time that I kind of need a break. I need to de-stress and focus less on material things, and I almost got my first of my video games done. It's kind of done, but I need to make a few checks. and I'm gonna take a break actually, because if my body and the universe tell me to do so, well, okay, I've been provided with whatever I needed in such unexpected ways. And you see, that's a point. Like, when you don't like something, okay, when you feel that you suck at something, it happens most likely because there is something much greater for you, okay? And I was protected by this, but again, I did break beyond these shields of protection, and well, I think to a certain extent, and well, to that extent, the universe agreed, because I actually had to experience a certain thing. Now, the universe may be shielding and protecting you from something, but you have to understand that as it happens, okay, something much better can be there for you. That is one reason, and the most important reason why you will be kept away from something, okay? I was kept away from all these super tempting females that I would meet, very rare females with, like super awesome characteristics, girls that could actually understand something about you. One could actually have had a relationship with those, but at the same time, I was more or less a mess. When I started meeting some such persons, right, usually one per classroom, and I've been in numerous schools and high schools and the such, I've been quite a migratory person. The point about this was that I was recovering from a period of utter self-destructive, psychological and mental, more like self-imprisonment. I had a very, dictatorial relationship with myself, and, wanting to bash everything out of my way and just keep all gates closed and don't communicate with anyone. That period of time, though destructive, it was actually very helpful. It allowed me to understand a lot more, in terms of depth, right? And when it came to fast-paced video games, I always thought there was something broken within me, because for some reason I know, and I knew even back then, that I had the potential to be even faster than a certain machine, but at the same time there was something limiting me, and I myself was kind of sabotaging myself. There was something like a higher self, okay, preventing me from doing my best, okay. And I had some examples back in the time when I learned that I could actually play a game at a very deeper level, and I'm kind of the one who, dives instinctively towards the deeper things, right? Like, give me the mechanics, give me the tips and tricks, alright? Don't teach me how to move around. I don't need that. I've got 15 years of gaming. Like, I can figure how to move, okay? And certain things, but, well, the point is, I instinctively dive deep in certain things, although at times when I share my wisdom, I don't instinctively share the deepest things, because I'd rather help people awaken and, provide them with certain information to just make them at least more curious, right? And then provide a bit more and a bit more, instead of just giving them a flat answer that, they'll take for granted. You have to understand that the truth can only be experienced, so that is why the universe kept me away from many things, and only after years did I realize why a certain thing would happen, right? Just like, for example, with coffee. I was always kept away from that, and looking at it, I didn't know why, but I never found an interest to that. As well as smoking. I had one moment in life when I wanted to try that, but again, the universe protects you in all sorts of ways, and, there was this fear that I had suddenly, right, that I didn't want to smoke it. Like 2 or 3 days before, one of our teachers actually told us what it's like to start smoking, and she told us that, after you start smoking, you may actually faint, you may actually have a lot of, dizziness or some problems. It differs per individual. And I actually stole a cigar from my dad's packet, right, and I had a lighter, and I wanted to test it at night, but suddenly those quotes of my teachers came back to my mind, and the very next day I actually had a big test in literature. So the point was, what if I would faint, right? What would my parents suddenly tell me? And I wasn't bombarded by such thoughts, but they just popped in my mind, and for some reason, I kind of understood, okay, I didn't understand the whole aspect, okay, but I just felt that it either wasn't the right time to try smoking, right? I was just curious, but kind of, smokers become smokers because of this curiosity. And, well, I just put it back, I put the lighter back, and, well, I never smoked in the end. Now, the point with fast-paced video games is they're everything, even darker compared to the simple games, right? The less fast-paced games, right? The slower-paced ones. Now, again, it is not the fault of the video games itself, but the way people are taught to react to things, okay? And video games, actually accidentally, but from a certain psychological perspective, they're actually, many of them are actually built around this, very subtle and perverted way, right? They improve this dopamine rush, right? Super fast-paced games, they are super fast-paced for a reason. You can do so many things in a very short time frame, right? You can kill a lot of players, right? And you get a lot of that adrenaline rush, right? You get a lot of that sense of accomplishment, which is more or less a false sense because you're technically just manipulating a few pixels on your screen. Now, I'm not saying video games aren't important, and I myself, being a super empathetic person, I kind of end up living the game instead of actually playing it, but, well, that's my own way of perceiving it, okay? And I'm sure most people kind of do this, but, the reason why they do it is because in many situations low self-esteem makes you believe that you can't achieve anything in life and you are some kind of shit that, you're never aware of your potential, so you're gonna ask or call to anything that is gonna give you this sense of achievement, right? And MMOs like excel at giving you such ideas, right? And oh, okay, nice. MZ tutorials. Okay, so these false senses of achievement, right, they're very amplified in super fast-paced games, but at the same time, this double-edged sword that video games can be, again, because of how most people's minds react to situations, right? They can also be a huge self-destruction pit, right? Like you're constantly thrusting yourself against some spears, right? You're hurting yourself again and again just because you want that dopamine rush. That is why you see so many children raging a lot and so many toxic communities, they got their brain dependent on that game, and the game got them super hooked, and they simply can't do anything else than abide to the calling of those parasitic spiritual entities, right? And psychological parasites, right? That exist in your mind. Those constant stories that you're building that you're not good enough. I also had such stories regarding games until I actually realized that, hey, you know what? In the end, it doesn't even really matter. All that matters is that I'm having some fun, right? I'm, like, I'm playing this video game, but at the same time I'm actually like living it, right? And it's not that I'm investing emotionally in it. That's the problem. Many people believe that living the game or being the game, okay, instead of doing the game. And when you do the game, it's technically the game is playing you. You have to do something like be the game, okay? And when you are being the game, right, when you are the game, right, you simply exist within the game and you interact with the game from a neutral standpoint, right? This is my stance that I adopt video games with, and even if I get absorbed by the game, it's still kind of a neutral standpoint, okay? Even if I achieve a certain thing or I don't achieve it, the point is I'm constantly training my mind to understand the fact that I'm just being the game instead of giving in to each of these rushes, right? You can see me playing Heroes of the Storm and get yourself an idea, have some fun, and the point is I kind of forget to speak because I get a bit absorbed by the game. I mainly and only play almost only play the Vikings in my video game recordings, because I want to constantly improve my skill on that which is the most complex, right? And the Lost Vikings in Heroes of the Storm kind of are the most complex character by far. Okay, there are other characters that are of course complex, but the Vikings are three characters in one, and no other character can easily achieve what the Vikings can do, right? And at the same time, they're also very frustrating, because if one of those dies, you know your capacity is also reduced, right? So I may also become frustrated a bit, but again, there is always a story behind each of these frustrations. So video games can always be used as a tool for self-introspection, but you need a lot of awareness, and this also can, all this practicing, right? Play the game without reacting to literally any situation. Okay, once you reach such a level, okay, you will see that so many things in your life simply cannot annoy you, because you're learning how to use all these annoyances, okay, all these things that piss you off. You're starting to use them to uncover the hidden stories, right? The lies that you have been creating, right? Because you have been creating certain stories that you don't like this, you're not good enough for that, and certain silly aspects like this that are constantly keeping you down, right? They're keeping you down, and therefore you're not gonna achieve much because you're constantly pulling yourself down, right? And the universe has been keeping me somewhat away from these games, specifically because of how they can mess up with your mind. Again, the universe won't allow things to happen to you beyond a certain level, because everything happens in this world based on a certain acceptance, and well, the only acceptance of the universe. If the universe won't allow a certain thing, it won't happen irrespective of how much occult superpowers you call to, right? There will always be something that will happen to prevent you from doing that, and well, you might actually suffer an accident that kills you if you still don't back down from trying to do that, right? And well, that's actually a point, right? So I've been kept away from these games, and I learned tranquility and the fact that comparing myself to other people, I've always had this one feature that seemed kind of either obsolete in other people or kind of inexistent, right? It was this power of mine to be super patient. Okay, like patience has always been one of my banners, right? One of my flags, one of my main representatives. Okay, and I actually learned in time to improve on this patience, right? And turn it into what I would later call wise patience. Okay, like I would start doing several things, and there are those moments when you hit a wall and you get the impression that you can't do a certain thing, and once this happens, it's a clear sign that you should leave that a bit and acquire a more distant view to see what you have accomplished. Because people who create a lot, and people who do that especially because you're still thinking of finances and you want to constantly provide, right? And many people want to provide but they over provide, and that is again not a good thing, because when you want to over provide, you're doing nothing else than a race, right? You want to be the most awesome person on the planet, which again is a kind of survival. You still believe somewhere that you haven't done enough, right? That's a very egotistical aspect, right? You're being manipulated to overdo things, and when you overdo things, you are technically constructing self-destruction. That is why fast-paced games can actually be self-destructive. Again, it's not their fault, right? You have to understand there are some, psychological perverted strategies behind them, but it's the problem that you react to those strategies, right? They hook you up. That is the main problem, right? You don't know how to avoid these, but actually it is important to not know, because that's how you learn your lessons in time. Unfortunately, many people have to bang their heads against the wall for like years on end, right? That is why you have so many toxic communities of games that are more or less fast paced, because they are constantly being hooked by such games, and they always want to do, to get these dopamine rushes, right? Because they are exactly like drugs, right? These dopamine hits that you're getting from these false senses of achievement in video games, well, actually there are achievements, right? But compared to real life achievements, right, when you achieve success in a business or you help a certain number of people with your skills, right, that's more or less a true achievement. Achievements in games are also important, but they don't serve other people kind of anything, so technically they're not necessarily that much of an achievement, right? And unless you're actually helping someone in games, or doing something that can actually lead to the betterment of other players. But you know kind of video games are more or less something like, watch your own and mind your own business, right? If you want to help other people, that can be done, but all video games, you're just minding your own account, right? You can't help other people unless you get on their account, right? Or you help them, do their own things. um, so another problem is this low self-esteem, right? Because low self-esteem leads to a lot of self-distrust, right? And if you look at all these people who rage a lot, their lives are simply a mess. And what they are doing is they are doing even more of a mess with their lives, right? There are people who ended up relationships because of video games. They ended up broke. They ended up out of their jobs. And it's just because people cannot contain this dopamine rush, right? And even when people get drugged, what these drugs do, they trigger oxytocin and dopamine into your head. And it's exactly like having achieved something great in life, right? It's just a false sense of achievement. And that is why you become so more and more dependent on that, because the brain will always hint you at the quickest routes to getting these dopamine rushes. It's exactly the same thing as with masturbation. It's a very quick and easy way, without any losses apparently, of getting these dopamine hits, right? But well, there is actually a huge loss when you release. And I have some other videos on spirituality. And to put it short, when you release, you give a lot of your life energy. That is why one of the reasons why you feel like shit afterwards, and you get the impression that you have to do more of it. That's the perverted psychology behind that, right? You feel like shit after that because coffee, drugs, and food that gives you these dopamine rushes, their mechanic is that they're actually nothing else than vampires. Okay, they are feeding off of your energy, but at the beginning they're having you feel that, oh my god, I've accomplished such a wonderful thing. And then you feel like shit, and the ignorance of your life also hits you back in your face, and you want to run away from that. And you're gonna call to that one or two sources that that will pull you away from what you're doing, right? And your life and your responsibilities. And that's how you get hooked, and you enter a vicious death spiral, right? And all this low self-esteem that is constantly being propagated in the world, and a lot of parasites and spiritual matters actually thrive. Spiritual parasites, entities, demons, and such thrive from the pain you're inflicting to your body when you're overdoing things. Because just because your body isn't telling you something, it doesn't mean a problem doesn't exist there. The body can take a lot of punishment until it actually feels hurt. And also, when you play the video game, I have a series on this, and you simply are connected to a whole different existence. Because playing a video game is like dying in this life, and you are technically living life in a different dimension. Because video games are a different reality as well. Everything that happens in your reality, everything that you perceive, everything that you have perceived is real. You have to understand this. Yes, this life is a simulation, I know, but everything that you feel with your senses is real. Even when you see ghosts, even when you think you heard a voice, that's you accidentally, or well, a sudden glimpse into a different dimension actually gave you a message from guides probably. Or there are all sorts of contorted and twisted dimensions beyond your mind. There are thousands of the such within your mind. And the way we are grown up and programmed, we kind of barely get to experience any one of those. Usually you experience these in your dreams, and expect your dreams to become more and more wild by the day, especially towards this end of 2020, and well, most likely even after that, in the 2021 year. So as of what I've been saying, it's not the fault of video games, but these fast-paced games can actually be a double-edged sword, right? If you are focusing only on what you're achieving, it's a way to actually enjoy the game more and more. But when you experience the game from a neutral standpoint, whatever happens, it doesn't have anything to do with you, irrespective of how much skill you and energy and effort you want to deploy into the game. You also have other players that, they have to do their part. So if you're doing the best and your team is kind of faulty, it's still gonna lead to most likely a defeat. But come again, it's not about winning the game. If you play to win, you're actually playing to lose. Everything in this life happens in reverse, and this can be a harder pill to swallow, especially for people who are addicted to games. If you want to win the game, you're technically setting yourself to lose the game, because you want to win the game just because you don't have enough wins in your life. Everything that you want it because you don't have it, and that is why many people can't manifest, for example, the so-called law of attraction, because the law of attraction gives you what you want in a way, because what you want is what you don't have, and if you put accent on what you don't have, you're gonna get more of that into your life, right? And that is why you have so many people who are obsessed with just winning at least one game, and then when they get to win that game after, dozens of losses, it's never good enough and they want another one. Just like you drink a coffee and then you need another one because you're hooked into it, right? And this is also another self-destructive aspect. So hopefully this helped a bit in opening your awareness and opening your eyes. I want my videos to be more like this and trigger some curiosity in people, rather than giving them a flat answer they might actually take for granted, right? So feel free to like and subscribe, feel free to hit the notification button. If you like this type of content, feel free to ask me questions in the comment section below, and give me some of those questions about spirituality and introspection that most likely you haven't been finding an answer, or if you have some quirky dreams and you might want an interpretation, I may help you with that. But again, those are just interpretations, because everyone has to understand their own dreams, and everyone else is most likely a hint at what it could be, because dreams are woven in the language of the beholder, right? The person they are transmitted to. So all this being said, you're loved and appreciated. Take care of yourselves, become more introspective, and you will see that all the answers that you're looking for are, well, just there, hidden within you. So, well, the more introspective you become, the more you will perceive this world with different eyes, let's say. So all this being said, take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones. You are loved and appreciated. Whatever you are doing is the best you can at the right pace for you, so no need to rush. And well, rushing means a lack of patience, right? And a lack of patience means becoming easily manipulable. That is why fast-paced video games manipulate you so fast, because they teach you how to bypass and ignore your patience, right? And if you're not patient, you don't become wise in life, you actually become mad, because you're gonna end up doing the same thing again and again, expecting different results, and that is kind of the embodiment of madness, right? It is madness, because if you do the same thing again and again, you will get the same results. If you expect something else, well, probably you should see a psychologist, right? Probably you should start asking some questions like, why are you focused so much on that, right? All the questions, there is this why questions that are the most powerful questions, right? And well, if you do this, you might actually end up discovering a lot more about yourself, right? So all this being said, my lovelies, take care of yourselves. You are loved and appreciated. Stay healthy, stay well, stay blessed. Ferenc Bor signing out.